Thank you all again for joining me in another episode of The Art of Comic Writing. I'm your host, Jorge Medina. That's George with a J, and welcome back. Today, as per usual, I have another writer on the other side of this intro, and we will be talking shop about a few things like what's your favorite book, or favorite movie, or comic book, or character from that book, movie, or comic. What's your favorite song, favorite season? All these things influence us. The world around us and our preferences not only influence us, but also inspire us. And for individuals like myself who look at the world through a creative lens, those are the things that drive my creative passion and ultimately influence what I write and how I write it. Today, I'm going to be chatting with the creator and I'm going to ask him what influences his writing, what influences yours. Leave it in the comments. Let me know. Plus, it's not an art of comic writing show without a writing prompt. But without further ado, my next guest is the writer and creator of Retribution. This is a book he wrote and views as a way to peek inside the personal traumas he endured as an adolescent and the stories he covered as a crime reporter, a career he performed for more than a decade with throughout parts of the Southwest. He has also spent more than 30 years writing stories about the NFL and the annual NFL draft. Please welcome R. Robert Garcia. Woo, there he is.
George, Jorge.
What's going on, Rob? Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me a little bit about writing. The fact that you did a lot of crime stories back in the day, and you're doing NFL work. That's incredible, man. So thank you for coming on. I appreciate you.
Hey, so this is my first time on your show, and I do have to say this, so because I'm proud of all my Latino brethren out there who get stuff going and succeeding and doing a great job. And George, it's great to see you on, and it's Jorge, but I'll say George.
Yes, Jorge. You can call me Jorge. We're gonna do this, Jorge and Raul. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do it like that right here, baby.
Here's the coolest thing: the spectrum of Latino, right? I'm the bleached one.
We come in all shades, baby.
Natural tan, my friend.
We come in all shades, man. We come in all
shades, man. All shades and all types of different hair. I got the Native American straight, like Indio hair. It comes out of got that Native American blood in here.
That's what we do, man. That's what we do. Are you still doing some of the reporting, or I know you're still doing some radio shows? You were mentioning to me before about for sports, but are you still doing some of writing, some of that crime reporting, or no?
Not the crime reporting. I mean, that lasted about a decade. That was in Austin, Texas, El Paso, Texas, Tucson, Arizona, and it is hey, bless firefighters and the police officers out there who do it, because it's you go and you see so much trauma and you develop these walls and you try to figure out like how to get through it, because if you let it all come in, it really just kind of takes you over. And when I was working as a crime reporter, one of the things that I used to do just cathartically is like get home and I would just journal stuff. I would journal what I saw that day, what were my emotions, what did I think, and so on. And it was a book that I was writing, and I had been writing for about a decade. And then about 5 years ago, I love comics. Comics have always been my thing. You can see it back here.
Yeah, I see that. I see it.
In the boudoir here.
So fancy.
Yeah, so fancy. Where there's no action, oops, on this side. They're bringing no women home to this.
Man, want to switch that up a little bit.
Yeah, I gotta throw them some lights or do something. But, so it was something that I just wasn't really interested in doing anymore. And I always tell people, when you have to knock on somebody's door, like within an hour of one of their loved ones passing, it just wears on you. So yeah, I got out of that. I still do the sports stuff, and actually this is busy season for me because trying to get this next Kickstarter coming out, trying to get my next books out, and also trying to do some stuff for the couple of radio stations that I do some NFL draft coverage for. So NFL draft right around the corner. So this is a busy time of year.
It is. Well, let's jump into it. For those watching, you know how this goes. I'm gonna ask Robert a couple of questions, a few questions, and then at the end, I'm gonna leave him with a writing prompt, and you guys can get in on this writing prompt. I'm gonna give you a writing prompt. Sit down 15 minutes in that sexy room. Write whatever you want to write for 15 minutes. You need it's almost like a warm up. And if you're happy with it, send it over to me. Same to you guys. If you guys are happy with what you wrote, send it over. I can maybe put it on my website. Whatever you want to do. If you don't worry about it. But why don't we get going? Why don't we get started here? First question, and we talked a little bit about your background in writing, but my question specific to your publishing: how did publishing your first book change your process of writing? If it did.
So two different worlds. You've got my first book came back out in 1994. That was my draft book. Wow. And so that was published throughout the Southwest, but that's a totally different monster because when you cover crime, when you cover sports, it's just the facts, the information. I mean, the draft's a little bit different. You're breaking down body types and so on, but it's still just information that you're trying to put into people's hands so that way they can find out more about, what their team is doing or what's happened in their city. When it came to publishing my first comic, now that whole process took about 2 years to get that first one out. And you go through revisions, just trying to create the character, because all the characters that are in the book are characters that I self-create, things that are, that pop in my mind or inspired by something else. But going through the actual publishing process, it was tough because not knowing what avenues were out there for me, who I could go with. Didn't know that didn't really need a publisher. You could just self-publish, kind of like what I did with my draft book. And then just putting a team together. And I think the hardest thing, you think about, okay, let's just get the book out, but you don't realize how much goes behind it. But as far as the actual publishing, it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was, but it's about, getting the information, finding, the avenue, like who's going to be the best person to work with, who's going to get that book out there, where you're going to, market it and so on. But as far as how it affected my writing, it's tough because the first two books came out really quick. It was book one and book two right back. I had already written those two. And then book three, I took a little bit of time just because of money. I would say with publishing, for me, it's not so much how it affects my writing, it's about how much it affects my wallet.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. It gets expensive. It gets very expensive. But like going back to the process, like your actual process, are you the type of writer who writes down outlines, or do you go right into a script, or did you have to figure out how script writing for comics was, like those processes, like as far as writing goes? Did that change at all?
I would say a little bit. So a couple of things here. I drive I've got two great editors. I mean, I've got fantastic people who work with me, and even my artists. I am not your atypical comic book writer. I don't do outlines. Everything's just in my head, and it's just boom, it comes out, and I write in just different phases. One day I'll have chapter 9, I'll come up with something with that. The other day I'll have chapter 3, and I just throw something down on there. So nice. I'm constantly, if something comes in my head, I just bring the laptop out and I'll jot down a scene, and then when I look at the scene, it's weird. I think because I read so many comics growing up, and because of how I worked in news media, you really have to be short and concise. It's not a book. You're not really trying to develop this whole canvas for people to look at. You have to realize the art's going to do a lot of that for you. Yeah. I was lucky enough when I wrote my first draft on Retribution that when I showed it to a couple of artists, they're like, "Oh wow, what was he like? Have you done this before?" And I was like, "No." It just kind of came natural from all of the books that I had read. And you think about, you got to think about the layout. That's the whole thing. When it comes to the process of writing, you have to think about it visually, not so much what words do I want to use in there? What's going to make this scene pop? Typically in a comic book, what's going to make that scene pop is the art. And you have to understand that. And it's not knocking writers out there. I mean, there are incredible writers out there right now. Jason Aaron, Chip Zdarsky. I mean, Neil Gaiman. There's just been people out there who have just written great things. But when you write in the comic form, you have to understand that you don't need as much verbiage as you would if you were just writing a book without pictures.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. We got to dial that back a little bit because it's all, like you said, it's a visual medium. And honestly, nobody's going to see what you wrote other than your artist.
Yep, exactly.
That's it.
Yep.
The public has no idea that your script was, just a couple of it could be freaking stick figures for all they know. They had no idea what it was, right? Like, so no, absolutely right, 100%, man, 100%. So it did it. So I think if anything, it sounds like you've applied a lot of what you already, the way you were doing writing, to comic writing, right? Like you
I would
said,
say
you
news
keep
media.
it
Yeah.
concise. You know, you want just the facts, right? So that's how you write, because that's what you're writing on those scripts, just the facts. The person smiling, or the character comes from this, you know, whatever, and that's it.
Yep.
You know, let the artist kind of play with that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I would say that one of the big processes is as you write everything that's in your head.
mm,
And then you always go back and reread and reread and reread. And then at that point, take things out and think, how
mhm,
can I be more concise with this portion of this story? How can I really hit this point? And then visually think, what do I want out of this panel? What do I want out of this page?
yeah,
What can I do to really bring that emotion through that I don't really need to emote with, letters? I
mhm,
can
mhm.
go and have that, emoted through the visual aspects of what a comic brings. And it was fun. I think the hardest part about writing is just trying to figure out who you're writing for, you know?
Ah, interesting. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Now, speaking of who you're writing for, what has given you the best results to market your book?
Right now, I would say Instagram, social media.
Hmm.
Um, it has been the best way for me to go out there and get interest. And, as I mentioned, understanding what the medium is, understanding that this is a visual medium, that you're going to bring people in with what you do, with the artwork. It was one of the aspects of this book that was so important to me because as a young comic reader and even an older one now, I'm a lot more of a reader now. But when I was younger, when I was in my adolescent and teenage days, I would strictly buy comics just for the artwork.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know how many stinking McFarlane covers I've got. I never opened up the books, and I just got it there because I loved his artwork. Walt
Yeah.
Simonson is who I fell in love with, and Walt
Mm.
Simonson is who got me reading. Thor 337, Beta Ray Bill popping out of that. That front cover, one of the most iconic ones that you can think about in the world of the comic industry, is is
Yeah.
captured me. And then I got into the story. It's about a son and his father. But as far as the marketing goes, Comic Cons have been great because when you're able to get in front of people and you're really able to tell them what's going on,
Right.
then at that
Yes.
point you can really bring that story across and you can hopefully make that connection with your reader. When you
Hmm.
use social media, you're just visually trying to bring people in. So make sure that you're marketing things that are going to get people excited, and you've got to follow those trends. And then obviously, coming on shows like like yours and just speaking with people and hopefully generating some interest there.
Yeah.
And then I do some, I've got local signings here throughout, the Austin area, which is kind of cool. People come up and buy the comic and you sign it for them and chat with them a little bit. But yeah, I would just say for me, it's always just been, and Instagram's my biggest one because I felt I was never on Instagram until I started this comic book, and then I got on, and then like I met you,
Yeah.
mi compadre, Jorge. Just
Yeah.
just how wide the arms are open to hug you and bring you in to this
Hmm.
community is phenomenal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You mentioned something about the Thor cover and how it brought you
Mhm.
into the book. And I think that when we talk about marketing, right, we got to remember that as a comic book, that's what that cover has to do,
Yep,
right? I, I,
yep.
I read I read I read somewhere it was the book, and it was Paul Sayre. He's a graphic designer, right? And he
Mhm,
said a cover must differentiate itself on comic book racks filled with like colorful artwork, right? Because if you think
mhm.
about it, there's so many other books out there that people want to pick up. He
Yep,
says it has to create anticipation, right? So you have to look at that thing and be like, oh, what's going on in here?
yep,
Grab your attention, and then it has to set the stage for the story that follows. And
yep.
then obviously it has to sell, right? Like, and these are the things that comic book covers have to do. And I think that as a comic book reader and as a comic book collector, I think we kind of knew that. We kind of know that because that's what attracted us to doing it. And
Yep.
and we also have to remember that that's what we have to do. And I think part of our marketing, and we were talking about this a little bit at the beginning and even off air, that a lot of money spent in art
Oh yeah.
because it's what's gonna make you the money, right? Well, at least it's supposed to. It's
Yep.
supposed to sell that. So you want a cover that's gonna grab people's attentions the way the Thor did, and finally get you to open up that book and finally read what's inside, right? Because
Oh
I
yeah.
always say this, dude, like great artwork is gonna buy you, is gonna sell you the first issue, but a great story is gonna keep bringing you back,
Exactly. Yep.
right? That's what's going to keep bringing
Yep.
you back. That story's got to be solid. If it's not, you're not coming back. I mean, And kudos to you, my brother, because you have done an incredible job with your book, because I keep coming back, brother. I keep coming back. That is a fantastic, fantastic story. And speaking a little bit about your story here, is there a particular character in your book, in Retribution, that you relate to the most, and why?
I would say, obviously, the main character R, because there are parts of me that are tied into it. I mean, whether it be personal traumas that I went through, growing up, being a Mexican American kid, living in Mexico and living in the United States, going to Mexico y soy blanquito, so it's like, that if you're, you can find that white, red-headed, blue-eyed Mexicano like in the interior part of Mexico. We don't see a lot on the border cities, so it's like you go through a lot. You go through a lot on both sides. The whole joke is you're not Mexican enough for the Mexicans, you're not white enough for the whites, and you get in this world that so many of us live in. And so that the experiences of having to deal with my father is something else that I tie in there. But it's also experiences of what I've seen professionally. Just, a lot of it is just stories from friends that I had growing up. I grew up, basically, single parent. If my dad was in Mexico, my mom was here in the States. I'd go visit my dad in the summers, and they got divorced, and I think I was like 5 or 6 years old. So you grow up like that, and most of the friends I had growing up, we were all, single parent households, and so it just changes a lot of things. And then there's a new character that's coming out, and sorry, these things are falling off my head. She's coming out, and she will be introduced in chapter 5, and we've already kind of shown some photos of her on the Instagram page, and it's actually, she may be my favorite character as far as the way she looks. I mean, I joked, I think I posted something on Instagram. I was like, is it so wrong if you fall in love with one of your characters?
You want to meet her.
Yeah. And I would say I almost identify with her in the sense that this is like who I wish I had been when I was younger.
Nice.
She is just bold as hell.
Right.
And she's just going to be a flat out badass character. And I think people are going to love her.
Where does she come from? And what's her name? What's her name? And where did she come from? How did she come about in your creative mind?
So it's funny because when I started off with this script and with this story, it was so going to be tied into this little world between two people. And it was really going to be this story about emotion. It was going to be about trauma and how you move forward through life with these traumas, and how they affect you and how they mold you, not so much about getting over them and so on. I wanted to focus more on that, just that pathway. But then I tied the sci-fi aspect in it, and that's where all the crazy stuff started popping up, because there is this whole story as to why the main character R looks the way he is and why he's brought back. And basically she falls in line with those characters. And so each one of them, her name is D, and that's the other thing. There's a reason why R, D, there's an A that's going to be coming up.
Okay, all right, I like that.
Letter names.
I like that.
And there is a history that being a sci-fi nerd and being somebody who watches a trillion movies, I mean, I'd say at least I watch 2 or 3 a week, and TV shows and all that, and especially sci-fi. I mean, I've watched Blade Runner 1,000 times, Star Wars, whatever it may be, but I really wanted to have the sci-fi aspect of it be as real as it could be in this fictional world that we're working in, and not have those plot holes that we all pick out when we either read a comic or it's not so much in a comic, but when we see these TV shows, I'm like, no, that doesn't vibe with what you had going on earlier. Let's fix that. So that's those 2 characters. One is I would say I identify with R more as to like maybe who I've been or what I've experienced, and D is more about like who I wish I could have been.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. Now, okay, so take me to that moment where you were sitting down, you created the story, and now you needed a title for it. How did you come up with the title for your book?
Okay, so this is gonna it was funny because I met this gentleman at the LA Comic-Con in December, and it was like he got exactly what I meant. Like Retribution, the word itself, really has so much more of a depth to it instead of like a word like vengeance. Vengeance is a little bit different. Revenge is a little bit different. Retribution has so many more layers to it. And that was why I went with that title, because retribution isn't like, oh, I'm getting somebody back for something. That's the simplistic way to like look at that word. There's so many more depths of it. It could be retribution within oneself, like overcoming something or becoming something that you've always wanted to be and you weren't able to be. It's just a word that hung with me, and it was funny. And the funniest part is when you start writing a comic book, you got to go out there and see any other comic book.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You get little runs off of people here and there, Batman Retribution or this
Right.
that.
Right.
But I didn't see anything out there that anybody else had. And it's crazy because now the title, the book, the characters, you go and you copyright all this stuff and so far so good,
Yeah.
But it's that was it. I just felt like the word had a lot more depth and identified itself with a lot more of what the story actually is instead of something simpler.
It's funny. I mean, I love that you said that because when you think about the word vengeance or revenge, right? There's always that negative connotation with those words. Vengeance, it's violence, it's automatic violence. It's like something happened and now that this person's out for vengeance. And it almost becomes very cliche, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you hear the word vengeance, I already know what the story's about. Something happened to this guy, right? So it becomes very generic. Same thing with revenge. Revenge is boring, right? But retribution, right? What's going to be his retribution or her retribution?
Exactly.
Why is she getting or he getting retribution? And retribution doesn't necessarily have to be. It's more than just revenge. Somebody obviously did something wrong to you, and now you're getting retribution. But why? Now you ask more questions, right? It's one of those words that makes you really ask questions. Why? How? When? Where? Like the questions you would ask as a reporter, say, right? So brilliant, dude, brilliant. I give you a lot of credit for that because it could have been easy. Could have been vengeance, right? It could have been vengeance, the revenge of R or whatever the hell, you know what I mean? Like it could have been anything, but the fact that you went retribution, that was very, very well done. I'm gonna ask
it wasn't used.
Well, that's the other one. It was available. How scared were you though when you were Googling? Oh man, I hope it's not. I hope somebody doesn't have it.
Yeah, because you just you don't want to have somebody else say that you're trying to steal their work, and you go down that path, and and so it's tough, but that word just applied.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so we're going to take a little break. On the other side of the break, I want to ask you a little bit about your influences in writing. So we're gonna take a little break here, and we'll be right back. And we are back with R. Robert Garcia, creator, writer of Retribution. We're talking writing. And this is one of our final questions here. Who or what, both, influences your writing?
Comic book wise, again, I always mentioned, the guy that just like brought me in with words, not so much just the artwork. And that was Walt Simonson, who actually did both. He drew and he wrote. Walt Simonson was my guy. And then, going through it, Neil Gaiman is who I talk about. Obviously, Frank Miller. I'm very much into the darkest aspects of like who we are, what the world is, and so on.
Yeah.
So those dark stories really reach out to me and really connect with me. And I think of like the Stanley Kubricks. I think of sci-fi stuff. I think of Ridley Scott. I think of just things that just really blew my mind when I watch these movies. But as far as writers go now, the guys who I like a lot now, current, are the Jason Aarons, Chip Zdarsky, as I mentioned earlier, but also Tom Taylor, Joshua Williamson. There's so many out there, and that's been really refreshing. The really refreshing aspect of it now is that now I think my mind and just my opinion on comics has changed a lot more than when I was younger. I still love the artwork, and the artwork's all over my apartment and all that. It's just, it's crazy. But the stories when you can just read, whether it be just like a 6-issue run.
Mhm.
Jeff Lemire's, I loved his. I knew I was going to forget it. Skullbreaker or something like that. And I just had this little run that was just awesome, and it was really simplistic, but it was just a great story that was put together. So there's so many good writers out there, and getting to meet some of them at the cons and talking with them a little bit. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's something that's just really cool.
Yeah, no. So when I think of influences, sometimes I get a little nervous, right? Because we're influenced by a lot of
Yep.
things, right? By everything we see, and sometimes I fear that some of those influences seep into our brains and come out on our page,
Yep.
and now it looks more like we're copying what we've watched or read. Do you ever worry that watching so many movies or reading so many books can influence your writing in a negative way, in a way where you're almost, I don't want to say plagiarizing, but you're there's a lot of similarities in your books with what you've read.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I'm about a year behind on my comic reading.
Right?
Yeah, it's super tough because when I first started writing this series, I was reading a lot because I just wanted to get. That was also, that goes back to the very, I think, to the first question, or what we were talking about publishing, but it was more about the writing aspect of it.
Mhm.
I read because I really wanted to make sure that, okay, yeah, am I getting this? Do I understand like how they're laying this out? You just, and like,
Yeah.
so the TV aspect of, the experience that I had, working in TV really helped out a lot. But I read a little bit. But then, yeah, I would say by chapter 3, I was like, yeah, I don't want to be influenced by anything else, because
Mm.
um, it's tough because I think people, I get a lot of Spawn, and I get a lot of Spawn, and uh, but that's just looks wise.
Yeah.
And even with that, I'm like, to me, the character, it's tough because he's different. You know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It's like, first off, their backstories are completely different,
Yeah.
and then just the character himself. To me, it's like this is. It's like that's not Spawn.
Yeah. I don't get Spawn, bro. I really
No,
don't.
it's so personal in
Mhm.
the aspect that it's
Yeah.
my memories, it's the memories of the people that I know, it's my professional memories. So all that ties into it, and that's one nice thing is there's not, nobody else has those but me.
Yeah, yeah. I think I look at influences also as inspiration, right? Like
Yep,
when
yep,
when something influences it, it inspires you to write. And as long as we're using them for inspiration and not
exactly.
ideas, I think we're okay, right? Because we need that. We need that little. Sometimes it's one of those days where you're like, I don't feel like doing this, right?
Yep,
But
yep,
but then you look at that poster right behind you and that Thor, right? Or
yep,
that or
yep,
or that or that or that
yep,
Spider-Man, and you start thinking, damn. Stan did it,
yep.
Simonson's done it. Like I can do this too. And then it propels you to continue. Now I have a bonus question.
Yes.
One bonus question. And the question is, what is your favorite YouTube channel? And why is it Get Your Meds?
That would be yours. I mean, come on, man.
Ah, dude. Thank you. Thank you.
Come
Thank you
on,
very much,
man.
my friend. Thank you
Yeah,
very
I've
much. I
always
appreciate
appreciated
it.
what you do, because I think that's one of the coolest things, and one of the best aspects about what we do is just watching this indie community grow. And I think
Yeah. Yeah.
it's great to see other people succeeding, and to be able to back those people and support those people and so on. If you come into this with a mindset like you're trying to challenge, or you're trying to compete against other people, then I think you've kind of lost
Yeah.
what this indie comic medium's about. It's about all of us just being our
100%.
own creators and writing our
100%.
stories and having fun with it. And so
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's the coolest thing about a show like yours, is just kind of giving somebody a little bit of a leg up, or a boost up to try to get those
Always.
thoughts and get that process
Always.
started for them.
Always, dude. Always. And to your point, man, and I agree with you 100%. The only person I compete with every day is me.
Yep,
Me. That's what
exactly.
I'm competing with. Is this guy right here. Because I can't compete with you. You know why I can't compete with you? You have a whole different story than I write about a duck. You write
Exactly.
about a guy, getting retribution.
Dude, eventually
It's
it was awesome. I still need a sticker from you, man. I don't have
I
a
got it. I'll
sticker
get it to
to
you.
put on my
But
laptop.
but it's different, right? It's two different stories, and
Oh
and
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and there's room for both. There's room for
exactly,
both those stories,
exactly.
man. There's room for both,
Yep.
and I honestly believe that. And listen, I want you to continue to do this, and I want you to continue to freaking put this book out, because I think it's a great book. I love it. when your next crowdfunding campaign, and you guys can check out the show notes for the next one, I will be pledging to it because I do enjoy the book, and you're a great dude, bro. But okay, so final bit of business is the writing prompt. Okay, the writing prompt. And now this writing prompt is just like a little warm-up exercise. If you're stuck and don't know what to write, maybe you pull this out in 15 minutes, you sit down, write this down, whether it's a prose or a scene, whatever you want to do. The writing prompt is looking over the edge of a cliff at clear blue water. Looking over the edge of a cliff at clear blue water. Who is looking over this cliff? Why are they looking over the cliff? Are they going to jump? Are they just admiring the clear blue water? What's in the clear blue water? What are they seeing down there? You know, all of these things, questions. Come up with something. Like I said, 15 minutes. If you like it, send it over. If you don't worry about it. I'm not going to be offended. But Rob, you're the man. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been fun. It's been fun. I'm looking forward to what you have coming on, and hopefully we'll meet in person one day.
I know. I got to find out when you're going to be close, local, or when I get up to the East Coast. I haven't gone to any cons on the East Coast, and that's on the to-do list. I need to get out east.
Come on down, my brother. Thank you very much, brother, and we'll talk soon. We'll chat soon.
All right, Jorge, que le vaya bien.
And that, my friends, was R. Robert Garcia. Thank you so much, R, for coming through and talking to us about writing. You know, it's funny. The more I do these shows, and every time I speak to a different, creator and writer, the more I learn about something new about the process of writing, something that I can apply to my writing. And I hope you're getting the same results in your writing, or the same results when you listen to the show. But big shout out to R. Robert, his book Retribution. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. What do you guys think? What influences your writing? Is it other writers? You know, is it music? Is it, what is it? Put it in the comments. Let me know. Don't forget, the prompt this week is looking over the edge of a cliff at clear blue water. What's about to happen? What are you doing there looking over this cliff? What's happening? Talk about it. 15 minutes, sit down in a room, just write what comes to mind, whether it's a short story, it's a scene for a comic, whatever it is. Write it down. My email is down below. If you want to share it with me, by all means, share it with me. If you want me to post it on my website, I can and I will. So do that. And also, you know what? Big shout out. I haven't done this in a while, but big shout out to Morgan Quaid. Morgan Quaid is the composer of the theme song for this show. Thank you very much, Morgan, for composing that for me and throwing it up there. I love it. It's really cool. I get a lot of compliments about it. So big shout out to him. Thank you very much. And now next week, I will have, obviously, it will be another writer. And I'm very excited because her name is Cheyenne Clardy. She's going to be on the show. We're going to be talking to her. Make sure that you tune in. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Do all those things. Share the video. Share it. That's huge. If you share the video, that's huge. Please do so. I thank you very much for watching. And don't forget, keep writing. Peace.